Welcome to another edition of webinar series on MBA Rendezvous. And today we have with us one of the thought leaders of Semantic SEO, Koray. Koray is the CEO of Holistic Digital, and he runs his agency out of Turkey. So Koray, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here. It means a lot to me and happy to be here.
Perfect. So Koray, since we discussed in the last episode, we'll take one step further in this particular episode. Our intent is to help the institutions, the educational institutions in India to understand more about enterprise SEO, semantic SEO. This is where we come from, right? So the perspective is if a student or an academician is wanting to understand how do I start my journey into SEO, and he's sitting right next to you in your room, looking at your screen, how you are working, that is the perspective we'll be taking today in this session, right? So my first question to you, Koray, today is, so when you get a new project in your agency, how do you start your topical research? What exactly is the process you follow so that you discover this is the green pastures that could be leveraged for this particular project? Help us with that.
So when I have a new project, actually, most of the time I prefer creating new websites rather than actually managing the existing websites, because existing websites, they always have a baggage from the previous years. This baggage might come from the broad algorithm updates or from spam updates or from other types of updates. And there is one more issue there, of course, it is the historical data, because when it comes to the trust of the search engines for certain types of websites, it directly doesn't work like in minutes, in seconds, in months. When it comes to the search engine trust, it actually requires higher level of historical data to increase the confidence of the search engine. If you were, let's talk about the sociology. If someone always lies, you wouldn't trust the person just because the person actually said one truth. You will wait even longer to be sure that the person actually changed truly. And the same situation happens for search engine trust too. You will need to give high level of positive user feedback, high level of quality signals for a really long time, so that the search engine actually can change its opinion about you. And the same goes for the websites. If an existing website has a really bad structure for many years, it means that actually the website was giving negative, non-quality and non-authoritative brand signals for many years. And to reverse it back, you will need to actually create a really big difference in a fast way, or you can just create a new website. So according to the actual existing situation there, I am trying to decide whether we should create a new website or whether we should actually process these things on the existing website. If the existing website, if is the situation, while doing the topical research, actually, first thing that I do is actually checking the topical gap and also information gap between the competitors. The second thing that actually I check, who is this brand? Because I can't talk about every topic, even if that topic is relevant to my queries. And there should be a kind of brand connection between the topic and between the web source or the website. For instance, if you are a pharmacy company, you can't directly go there and talk about the chemicals. You will need to create actually a contextual bridge from your industry, from your brand identity to that specific topic that you want to process. And once you actually create these type of connections, then you will try to understand how many content pieces you should write. And it depends on the company's conditions, because if the company doesn't have enough level authors, it will affect the topical map that I am creating. Or if the company doesn't have enough level of page rank, brand power, brand search demand, again, it will change my topical map too. Because if the brand is strong enough, I would prefer creating less pages as much as possible. But if the brand is not authoritative enough, it means that I will need to go closer to the query in the context. And to be able to do that, I will need to create actually specific pages for the specific query group. Then I will need to use more internal links to connect all these things to each other. So in this case, actually checking and comparing page rank, checking and comparing the historical data, checking and comparing the brand power, brand search demand, and brand authority. And at the same time, quality of the existing content, existing internal links and the anchor tags, and brand's identity. These are the things that actually help me for creating these topical maps and also semantic content network designs.
Okay, so once you have this information gap and you have created your semantic network, Koray, what is the next step that you do in the process? How do you start to execute the process from there?
So to be able to execute the process even further, let's say I created a topical map, the next step is actually creating a root file. Usually there are many concepts in the SEO field and everyone uses actually a different terminology. But at least in my terminology, when I say a root page, it's like the ROM of the semantic content network. Everything will go there eventually, directly or indirectly. When it comes to the seed pages, these are actually like simple capitals or simple centrals or centroids for smaller contextual areas. The other section is actual note pages. The note pages, they are the smallest content briefs and the article or the content items for creating contextual coverage further for certain types of query networks. Another thing here is I always check the query templates, because if I have a query template, it means that actually maybe I can't rank for that specific query that I am focusing on there. But if it is in a template, it might help me to actually create a couple of extra more content pieces from the same query template from the similar context. Then I can actually cluster all these things together. And if I am taking the historical data from the things around it, it will be helping for me actually for ranking higher for the one that I am also targeting there as well. It is a kind of relevance and trust propagation, like these similar pages. If one of these similar pages for the same query template, if it ranks higher, if it starts to satisfy some queries, if the search engine sees that, the machine learning algorithms will actually start to label or consider the other closest candidates from the same article group or from the same content pieces in this case. And another area here is actually determining the anchor text, because to be able to determine the anchor text, I need to check the anchor text of the competitor. Google or the other search engines or any kinds of semantic search engine, they have multiple types of indices. One of them is actually just for the anchor tags, they call it. And when I actually use the anchor tags, they actually understand that these concepts, the terms, or the word sequences that I am using in the anchor tags, they are actual topical entries. Then they actually state the purpose of the links. And I am trying to actually use more diverse, lemmatized and stamped and natural or naturally placed and more weighted anchor tags. There are a couple of ways to weight a link further. You can make the link bigger, you can put the link into the central area, or you can use less links and you can put all the links directly inside of the main content. And once I do these things actually in a proper way, the search engine starts to actually understand where they should weight more. And since I use these things as the topical entries and contextual terms, they start to understand overall purpose of the website in a better way too. There are many other things that actually I do, like information check, accuracy check, extracting key phrases. By saying key phrase, I mean knowledge domain terms, the terms that will appear only for that topic, the terms that actually show who is the real expert. I also check the vocabulary richness, because most of the time educated people, the educated and also expert people, they actually use more diverse words, more unique words inside of a content, and they don't actually leave the sentences half like in the natural language. They don't use their own actually punctuation. They use a regular normal punctuation. For instance, even in the scientific websites today, I see that they are using the colons or commas or other types of punctuations randomly according to their own taste. But there are actually certain rules for using them as well. And one more thing is, if I have an existing website there, I start content pruning directly. I start to merge the specific content items, or directly I start to actually remove some sections so that I can actually put more weight into the new content that I will be refreshing directly.
Right. So now I'll come to some very specific questions for you today. and we wanted to understand your perspective around brand keywords. So brand keywords are one of the most transactional keywords, most bottom of the funnel content keywords. So let's suppose, say, since we come from an educational domain and we are writing about one of the institutes in India, one of the institutes such as IIM Ahmedabad, what exactly should be our thought process if we are writing some content around IIM Ahmedabad? That is one of the top-notch business schools of India. So major perspective is the brand keywords. How do we look at it? How do we think about it? How do we think about the cluster we have to create around those brand keywords?
Yeah. So the question here is actually, it is a little about actually entity SEO. And when you have a brand, you should understand that actually it is a brand type entity. And to be able to change the existing queries nature, or to be able to add new queries to the Google's own perception, you will need to have first the prominence. And in this case, let's say you have chosen a generic word as your brand query. By the way, you are frozen. I'm not sure whether you hear me. You hear me, right?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. So in this case, let's say we actually have a brand with a generic words. In this case, actually, the first thing that you will need to do is changing the query definition. The query aspects, the query definition, these are actually concepts from, again, the Google. And when I look at the actual query aspect, they try to understand the theme of the query. And if you search for the Hawaii, for instance, most probably the next word after the Hawaii will be about holidays, vacations. And this will be the main context and the main theme there. When we look at the query definition, it is actually verbalization or phrasification of the query aspect. And once you have these query aspects and the definition, you will need to understand that with what possibility actually Google will start to assign these query aspects and these query definitions to your brand identity. If you have chosen a generic word as a brand name, it will be really hard for you to actually show yourself there, because most probably Google will assume that people are not looking for you. But if you have, as I say, if people start to use the same generic word as an anchor tag to you with some backlinks, let's say, or with some external references, if you are reviewed, if you are mentioned, if you are started to get some positive reviews, or if you are started to be compared to the other competitors from your industry, in this case, they will start to actually understand your overall situation there. For example, in the near future, I will be publishing some other case studies for SaaS SEO. One of the company's names there, I can tell it right now even, is actually Sunny Valley Networks. The problem is that after 6 months, we had another brand, which is Sunny Valley Meat. So right now, for the concept of Sunny Valley, we are both ranking together. And in the Google auto completions, actually, they are not directly using even auto completions. They started to show the query refinements at the top of the SERP directly. In the refinements, we see that we have advanced next generation firewall and the meat or the steak together. So now the actual query changes its meaning, its character, and it's not good thing for my client. So in this case, I will actually start to dive into these attributes, into the concept or the definition of the Sunny Valley even further. I will have more reviews. I will actually dominate the brand name even further. Another thing here is, since you are actually a company, you have to show that certain types of attribute and entity pairs and relations appear for your query terms too. If I search for Sunny Valley founder, if I search for Sunny Valley Foundation, address, phone number, contact. So these type of things actually show that this is a cooperation. And you will need to actually give and make Google or Microsoft Bing extract all of these actually connections directly from your brand. I have written actually brand SERP optimization before. It's a guide from my website, holisticSEO.digital. And there actually I explain how you can trigger people also ask questions about yourself, how you can actually trigger a knowledge panel and also a Google Business Profile panel, how you can actually unite your Facebook and Instagram profiles and their reviews inside of your Google Business Profile panel as well. And I also explain how you can actually affect the related search queries about yourself, how you can actually dominate and don't let other brands to rank for your own queries. The first rule is that you will need to create way much more connections. When it comes to the entity SEO, to understand which attributes are actually more prominent and important than the others, there are a couple of ways. One is checking the distance. The other one is checking the association or connection count. If we see that actually some certain types of attributes or the profiles of the same entity, if it has more connections, it means that actually it is more important. If I would ask you George W. Bush, or if I would ask you actually Johnson, no one will tell that actually these people are podcast owners, these people are actually Hollywood stars. But actually President Johnson, he was a Hollywood star too. He actually played in the, he acted in the movies. He also actually, he has also some songs and some shows as well. And in other words, he is actually a showrunner too, but no one remembers it because other attribute is very much more important than the other. The same happens for the query entity or query phrase, let's say query term, and the entity associations too. When someone searches for the Sunny Valley, what is the distance between Sunny Valley and meat? And what is the distance between Sunny Valley and networks? So another way is checking the repetitions. How many times actually words like network appears together with Sunny Valley? How many times steak, meat, or other types of things actually appear together with the other one? In this case, repetition will create a distance too. And the next step is extracted information amount. So if you're able to give more connections for your own brand, more than others, you will be actually dominating the query results there as well. And you will need to use more structured data like HTML lists, HTML tables, or you will need to also distribute this consistent information among other places too. Just check about this resource or about this source panel and try to understand actually how these, how Google actually perceives you, what kinds of review appears about you, what kinds of reviews appear about your competitor. After a point, if you see that actually you appear in the auto completions or query refinements or related search terms, or people also ask questions, or in the map pack, it means that actually you start to dominate the query. But the first step actually for having the branded queries is changing the query's meaning. If you can change its meaning with the information on the web, you will be appearing there. The same happened also for holistic SEO. Before me, holistic SEO was a mindset. Now it is a company. If you search for holistic SEO founder, you will see my name. If you search for holistic SEO, you will see my map pack there, or you will see my name in the related search terms, or maybe sometimes in the panel section as an internet marketing company and other things. So Google already knows that it is a vertical, but it is also a company too. Both goes together.
Wonderful, very interesting concept, Koray. So, but let me dive a little bit deeper here with some practical examples. So, can I share my screen, please?
Say it again?
Can I share my screen with you, please?
Of course.
So let's discuss about this, Koray. So let's discuss about, we have a school called as Harvard Business School, and we want to somehow rank for Harvard Business School. So currently, if we see, all the pages are from that Harvard Business School only, right? But what happens if we are going with entity SEO and we write an article or a cluster around Harvard Business School and we want to give more information about it? So how do we do it, right?
As a brand, but your brand name, if it is different, in other words, if your brand name is directly different, you will need to check actually a couple of query templates here. First is brand alternatives. The second is brand versus another brand. The third is actually brand founder, brand contact, brand address, brand reviews, and brand advantages or superiorities or myths about it. If you're able to cover and list the Harvard Business School alternatives, and if you are able to compare them, if you just write versus to your query, come to the search bar and just put the word versus or VS. So they already give you the first candidates directly there. And these things actually are not directly coming from the queries or the query search demand. Most of them are actually coming from the titles of the documents, page rank of these documents, and prominence of these specific entities in the same group of entity class or entity list. In this case, if you are able to process other entities and if you are able to compare them to each other, if you also check the alternative, for instance, alternatives, which is also a list it will be. If you write the alternative or etc. Alternatives, even you can use plural form too. If you're able to rank for this query too, and then if you're able to also process the founder of the school or the alumni from the school or education system of the school, then if you are able to create a certain type of or proper type of internal link between these things, you will definitely appear in the people also as questions multiple times. Then at the same time, your main review page, it might appear directly in the specific brand name as well. If you come to the below area a little further, for example, there is Wikipedia and their own social media networks there, which is a signal for actually really important industry and also the brand. But your review here in this area, it might also appear too, because Google, slowly they started to actually arrange their brand sort design in a way that also there are reviews that the brand itself can't control. Since you are reviewing these type of entities to show actually a third eye opinion or the third opinion about the company, they also rank these type of pages for these type of areas too. One more thing here is using the brand name as your anchor tag. If you're able to use this specific brand name as the anchor tag for your main page for this business, again, still you can rank. But when it comes to the branded queries, in this case, actually, Harvard Business School query, it is a branded query for the Harvard Business School. So in other words, you are trying to rank for another company's name. So it is a little different than actually changing the query meaning or using a query as your name in this case. So in this situation, you will need to actually associate yourself with the Harvard Business School. And to be honest, for instance, in review website, I use their logo closer with my own logo. I just don't use their names closer to my names. I also use their logo closer to my own logo visually too. At the same time, if I can include also the alumni or some education professors from their industry inside of my website, maybe with their biography, maybe with their own reviews, interviews, if I can create these entity relations between me and between other entities from Harvard, then again, you will actually have very much more higher chance for being ranked in this area as well. Even being shared by their social media profiles will help. In this case, it will actually associate you with them at the same time too.
So in the network, we have to be somehow closer to that particular entity, whether through reviews.
Yes, even if you can't go directly closer to that specific entity, you can go closer to the entities that are related to them. It might be their competitors, it might be their alternatives, it might be their founder or their professors, or it might be even their region, to be honest, their campus region, their campus location. All these things are different entities. Once you understand also the query networks that appear around these entities, you will be able to actually start to use these entity associations inside of your semantic content network. Once you are able to arrange a proper network, you will also rank for Harvard Business School reviews or queries like, is it worth it, or what is the advantage of it, etc. And once you rank for these queries, you will be coming for their brand names as well. I have actually experienced the same situation for banks and insurance companies too. Ranking for the insurance companies' pages or banks' names is even harder, to be honest, than the Harvard Business School. But if you're able to give, let's say, their services information directly inside of your brand, if you're able to also put conversion points. For example, I realized that whenever I put a form element, an input element, an HTML input element, for the brand names, I was ranking actually higher, because when it comes to banks, everyone wants to take a loan, and to be able to take a loan, they have to fill a form. And when I put the form inside of my pages, I was able to rank higher for their brand names. And in this situation, if people need to fill some forms to apply to the Harvard Business School, just act like a proxy of them. Imagine that they are able to actually apply these places via you or with your consultancy. So try to be like a sub-entity of Harvard Business School so that they can be ranked that area too. If these people can actually perform their search intent for Harvard Business School, also from your web page, from your landing page, yes, you will actually rank there because you are using their brand name like your proxy, like your partner. So it will be very much easier in this case.
Wonderful, very interesting, Koray. So let me take this further from here. And as you were mentioning that ranked entity list is one of my favorites, let me come over to ranked entity list. So let's suppose say that we want to now search colleges in Cambridge, for example. So this student is looking for Harvard and then he moves further and searches colleges for, right. So this is the other search criteria from a student's perspective, since we are speaking about the educational institutes here. Now, this is a listing kind of a query wherein it will try to list out different colleges in a particular area. What are your suggestions for this particular kind of queries? We were discussing about.
First of all, here you are actually using the plural term of the concept. If you are using the plural term, it means that actually I had that research somewhere here, but it's a little far away. So from the Henry Broder, the taxonomy of the search, it is actually a really good examination of how the web is constructed in a natural way. According to the Henry Broder, there are hubs and there are authorities. Once you actually use the plural form, the colleges, it is actually entity type plus it is plural, and you have a location there. So in this case, actually, the plural form of an entity type, it means that actually we will need a kind of hub, a kind of actual grouper and a reviewer, and a kind of comparison engine or an expert that actually compare these entities to each other based on certain criteria. So to be able to actually rank for these type of plural forms, instead of actually directly promoting a single entity with single criteria group, you will need to actually list multiple entities according to their prominence or according to their certain aspects. And you might actually even use multiple concepts there. If I ask you what is the best protein powder for muscle, let's say muscle growth, in this case, actually, I can even change these query or this context at the subsections even further, like what is the best protein powder for, let's say, X muscles, or according to the muscle type, or according to the exercise types, or according to the digestion speed, according to the even, let's say, according to their ingredients or their production methodologies, I can create different types of lists. So you can actually list same type of things in 20 different ways, because there are always certain criteria. So in this case, you will need to find actually the most important criteria group, and you will need to give a one represented, actually specific representative list. At the subsections, you will need to expand and go deeper for your contextual layer. You will need to list the same entities for different aspects too. If I write the best electric scooters, first I can go actually for, let's say, electricity consumption, but I believe no one cares about it that much. So in this case, I can go for speed, I can go for comfort first. Then I can go also for the price. So these three main criteria, it might be actually my main sections. For example, open the second ranking, please. The first ranking one is usually coming from the broad core algorithm updates. So let's look at the below area a little. Try to find just the concepts that they are focusing first. So they put the price to the top, right? Then the battery capacity, then the range, then the charging time, then the top speed. So compare these attribute prominence also with other sources. Open the third one if you want. So check what they are actually giving first. Again, the model name, naturally, since it represents the identity. And try to understand actually how the order changes in this area. And here too, they give a kinds of list. But most probably these lists actually won't have a kinds of feature snippet that much if the search engine tries harder. But in this page, we just understand that actually having more entities and the image or the visual communication there, and also having a kinds of input area like view offers for instance. It is a kind of an activity. So it also helps them for ranking higher in this area too. And there are stars for every entity there. And there are many reviews for all of them. And probably all these individual web pages, they support each other and they support this group or hub type page as well. So in your MBA situation too, you will need to understand whether you will need to actually open individual pages for every program one by one. If there is no search query or search demand for them, I wouldn't do, to be honest. I will try to give them in the same page. If there is a search demand or the search query demand for them, I will do that in different pages as well. So in this case, if you want to rank for certain types of entity lists, first try to choose the criteria that you will need to focus on, then try to understand how these criteria actually affect and combine together with each other, then give your actually suggestions, and then expand and variate your list even further.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Koray, let me now take a step back, and for the audience, let's try to make it a little simpler for them. So one is that Koray is out there on LinkedIn and YouTube helping them out. How they can help themselves as well. What are your recommended readings? How do you choose the research papers that needs to be read? How do you relate that research paper to projects? What books do you recommend for the students and professors to read through? What are your recommendations, please?
So the first one is actually just here. It is information retrieval from Prabhakar Rakavan and Christopher D. Manning. They can also read that. The second one is actually just there. It is modern information retrieval from Ricardo Beas. Let me just check. Yes. And also besides that, I print many different types of researchers or many types of, I follow or stalk many different types of inventors as well. And usually I will suggest you to check actually people with 15 years of experience inside of Google, like Paul Har, let's say, like Nando Payak, let's say. And you can also actually check, of course, Andre Broder as well. Last time I checked, actually, he was, I guess, in Apple, but still it counts. Stephen De Baker, again, he is also in the Apple for actual Apple search engine right now. Krishna Bharat, it will be perfect too. And Nitin Gupta, another Apple engineer right now, but I work in Google more than 10 years, especially for feature snippets. And you can also check, you can also actually check even Matt Kalt's inventions too. He appears in many designs as well. And another thing is that when it comes to the reading, I don't actually follow a certain order. I just read because I love reading these things. Then after a point, you will start to see that the concepts are overlapping and they are trying to just protect their own methodologies and their designs in the patents. And once you understand then how hard they are trying to actually expand that patent, how hard they are trying to refresh it, how hard they are trying to actually put more details there, it means that it is more important. Then when you check the inventors, you also understand that they are really critical too, because their names are also appearing inside of the Google blog posts. They are also coming to the Google I/O. They're also there as respected engineers more than 15 or 10 years. Once it happens too, you will start to understand that, okay, this person probably affects the algorithm in a higher way than the John Miller, to be honest, because Google Search Relations team, they are just the autist, the first section that you see, but behind that, there are many engineers, really important engineers. And in this case, I will suggest them to follow the names first. Instead of actually going to the Google patents and checking one and reading it randomly, you will get lost. First, you will need to understand who you actually should read. When it comes to researchers, you can actually follow the Luna Dong, or you can follow the Dr. Nyark or Dr. Masler, as I said before. These people actually write really understandable, clear, structured researches, especially opinion papers. They really write in a good way too. And of course, I can mention the SEO by the sea in this case. It is really important as well for everyone, I believe. And since Bill Slavsky is not among us anymore, I have to check what are the latest updates, what are the latest patents by myself. Then I filter them according to the inventors or according to the topics. Then I check their latest improvements, latest developments. And To be able to implement something from a patent, from actually also the research paper inside of your website, first of all, you will need to understand that it won't show its effect like just today. For instance, for semantics, it has taken 20 years until they became the major vertical in the SEO. But like until BERT, it wasn't even important that much. So we were using other methodologies for ranking. Whenever they actually get higher or better language models, slowly we start to get actually better things or better relations. So in this case, if you are using a patent for optimizing your content, you should understand that actually it is for the future updates rather than the existing algorithm. If you are using, let's say, augmented retrieval language model directly to actually give information more specifically, one algorithm might tell that, okay, this is a little closer to the gibberish content. Another algorithm might tell that, but it gives everything explicitly, and it actually helps us to decrease the cost for text processing. So while you are optimizing your content for an algorithm, you might be de-optimizing it for another one. So in this case, actually, you will need to find balance for many situations. For instance, Pegasus, it tries to actually differentiate opinions from the facts for summarization. It means that for the summary area, instead of giving your opinions, just give the facts. Give your opinions at the bottom of the article if it is possible. So if you're able to extract these type of insights from their technologies, from their improvements, because they are spending millions of dollars for these language models and these engineers. So you shouldn't assume that they are doing these things just for showing how they are good or how they are famous or for as an hobby. So it means that they are using these things. Transformers, it was the biggest revelation in the NLP, and they have actually published it 2017, but I don't think that actually they have found it in the 2017. I believe they were using it for many years already. Many engineers from Google, they say that there are hidden technologies inside of the company, new programming languages that are not published or announced even before. For instance, TypeScript. It comes from Google, we know it, but I don't think that they actually found it just 2 years ago. I believe they found it way much before, they used it way much before than they actually announced. And I know that they have many other things that they even don't announce as well. So in this case, we should understand that these research papers, language models, they show actually their capacity. And when you look at the Lambda, for instance, for dialogues, applications, and systems, there are 4 main criteria there. One is interestingness. So their system always tries to give interesting answer. The another one is safety. They always try to give the safe answers. In other words, they don't want you to tell actually wrong information or dangerous information. They also want you to give always groundedness. In other words, you always need to actually follow the consensus. And just yesterday, actually, 2 days ago, Google actually updated their webmaster guidelines. They rebranded it as Search Essentials. And there, for expertise, Google has written a new sentence. They say that actually, if you are writing about a scientific topic, give the consensus, they say. So what is the difference between groundedness of Lambda and giving the consensus in the Search Essentials? They are basically the same understanding. They are telling the same thing. From a research paper to a patent to do even a blog post from Google, they are telling the same thing. It's the important part. You shouldn't focus on that much the mathematical formulas inside of the patterns. Just try to understand the concepts and their relations to each other. But there are some mathematical importance there too. For example, foregrounds, they are very much more important when it comes to question answering algorithms, because they say it directly and they use it directly there as well. So there are these type of things. I can say many other things here for explaining this topic, but I believe semantic SEO is not, to be honest, it's not for everyone. I'm not trying to be blunt here. I'm just trying to be honest and open for everyone, because you will need to read a lot. You will need to read all the time. And most people in the SEO, they want results even like in 3 months. It's even, to be honest, not that good enough. And you should understand that same content can rank higher on a different page. Sometimes it's not about the heading. Semantic SEO might not be for everyone because it requires an analytical mind. You will need to have an empathy with the machine. You will need to have the empathy with the algorithms, and you will need to understand actually how many times you are giving the wrong information, how it affects the next page, and how the pixels or the gap between the sentences affects even the contextual consolidation between them. And to be able to use all these things, you will need to train people repeatedly, and it's not that easy as well. It might make you actually impatient sometimes. When you also look at the results, they might come late. Sometimes you will wait for a core algorithm update for 6 months so that you can show the new face of the website. Sometimes you will need to even wait way much more longer, or sometimes Google actually won't be able to understand the content properly. So in this case, if you are able to read these papers and understand these connections, yes, follow these leads as much as you can. But if you can't read these things or show the patience, you can use, of course, some semantics, some NLP principles there, but I would suggest also using other SEO verticals there, including PageRank for ranking higher. It might put you in a safer zone at the same time.
Wonderful. So let me take my last question for the day, Koray. And I would really like to understand Koray's views on AI generated content. What do you think about this, Koray?
Okay, I will answer it, but the Zoom says that actually your network bandwidth is low. So if you can't hear me, just try to let me know. For AI written content, I actually explained it before in my Google Auto Rank research paper. I also explained these a little bit with some other methodologies. And there are many things that I didn't publish too. For example, I have created a website with AI. It has taken actually 60,000 clicks a day. Then it went to the zero with the manual penalty. So now it is around 5,000 again. So after 6,000, 60,000, 5,000 doesn't sound that much good, to be honest, even if it is good too. But the thing here is that when it comes to AI, yes, you can use it, but you will have to understand that AI can't find new information. They can just repeat the human language. So in this case, there is one more thing actually. If someone else also uses your language model, probably you will be overlapping with each other. And the third thing here is that AI doesn't have an author expression identity. It writes, always say. So to be able to give a kinds of expertise signal, a kinds of real world expertise, I will suggest you to use it in a cautious way, because I can write the best article for cancer treatment with AI, but it doesn't make me the expert. So AI content writing, actually, it might put some people into the dangerous position. And that's why Google has to be actually cautious about it. So also the AI, it is bloating the web. So if everyone writes the really great expertise level of content with the AI, and what Google will continue to look at. So it might actually give more weight to the, again, page rank as well. It might affect even the future of the algorithms too. So while bloating the web, while actually giving fake expertise, while using actually common language expression models, and while actually making people use ghostwriting with computers, these are not good things for user experience. So that's why if you are able to use your own unique language models, it will be very much more helpful for Google as well. So maybe after this podcast, I can share that website to warn people. I can send you the tweet and you can show it into the screen as well.
Perfect. We will do that, Koray. And thank you so much for your time today, Koray. It was a really interesting session as always. A lot of deep insights with practical examples. We thank you so much, Koray, once again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.